I don't even exactly know where to begin. But I know it's been a while since I've made a video. I just didn't have, I don't know what the word for it is. I've been finding it really difficult to talk verbally lately. Things have been really hard. Um, uh, it's been about a year since the whole fiasco happened at Emory, and things really haven't gotten any better. And I've tried to move on and, you know, find another doctor. And it just seems as though the defamatory material that was put in my medical record at Emory has continued to follow me. And it just gets passed on from doctor to doctor. And it's not helping me. Um, I just, right now, I feel such a profound feeling of utter grief because I'm still sick and I'm not getting the help that I need. Today is my birthday, and I have been I have been melting down and melting down and melting down all day. And I have been trying to find the silver lining in all of this. I know that some people say that being an Aspie is a blessing, and people talk about the positive aspects of it. And I know that there are some parts of it that are helping me survive this far. But it's so hard. It's so hard to be in your 50s and go through this alone. Especially in your late 50s. And then to be so utterly misconstrued and misunderstood. And to be physically ill. And aging and not be able to have anybody that you can go to. No soft place to fall. And to wake up every morning and know that you don't have anybody that has your back. And that you have to go through this utterly alone. And that nothing you say and nothing you do makes any difference. That you can go and try to talk to people and explain yourself, and it doesn't make any difference. Because they don't listen and they don't believe you. And This is so hard. I literally don't know where to turn. And where I live, nobody wants to deal with adults that have this, much less adults that are chronically ill physically on top of it. This primary care doctor that I went to after I left Emory, she eventually did give me a referral to Vanderbilt, to their autonomic clinic. But it was like pulling teeth. It was like at every turn, it was like she didn't feel comfortable doing this, she didn't feel comfortable doing that. And, I'm so low income. I'm on disability, and I'm at the lower end, which is, basically less than $800 a month. I don't have the money to cover the cost of travel and hotel and all that. And the only way that I can get there to Vanderbilt and any of the other out of town consults that I need to go to get further assessment, to find out what's wrong with me, what the underlying condition is that's causing the dysautonomia and the other symptoms that I've been having, the neuromuscular type symptoms. The only way that I can get there is through a nonprofit organization that's connected with Medicaid. But that requires a doctor basically to vouch for you, is what it comes down to. They have to fill out a form stating that you cannot get comparable workup in your home state. And I can't. I mean, clearly I can't, because Emory is basically the largest healthcare system in Georgia. And the way that they systemically sabotaged me a year ago, they hold a lot of clout. And a few weeks ago, I had another day that was really bad, where I had near syncope, most of the day, and I had to call this primary care doctor and ask her what to do, because it was just going on, and that's how it is. It's episodic. I have it, and it's kind of intense for a while, and then it'll let up, maybe for a few weeks or maybe even a few months, and then it always comes back. I just honestly didn't know what to do, and I called, and I figured the best thing to do was to let her know and see if she had any suggestions. And she, I guess the nurse relayed what was going on to her, and she got back with me through the nurse, saying that she wanted me to see another neurologist. And right off the bat, I thought, oh God, I really don't want to do that, because the local neurologists, like I said, just haven't, things haven't gone well, and they just tend to take what the other one says and kind of run with that. And rather than looking at me with fresh eyes and getting to know me for me, and observing what my symptoms are over time for themselves, all they do is go by the records. And if the records paint you in a bad light, even if it's completely untrue, that's what they go with. And I could kind of see that coming right away, and, I did try to find the one that seemed like would be the best in, in Georgia, from reading their profiles and that kind of thing. And this particular one was a female, sounded like she would be compassionate, and at least from her profile. I mean, you can only tell so much from that. But I did my best to vet the various ones in town and try to pick out one, since this doctor was insisting that I see a neurologist here locally while I was waiting to get into Vanderbilt. And she wanted the records like usual, and not just the records from Piedmont where I was seeing this GP, but she wanted the Emory records. And I thought, oh God. So the only thing that I knew to do was to just send her the relevant material, the test results, the objective test results, without all the bullshit and the conjecture and all that stuff. Because in reality, the objective stuff is really, the only thing that, that really, is worth anything. Opinions are like buttholes. I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it. Everybody has one, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's true, so the only thing I could do is just give her a clean copy of the records that I had, minus all of the loose talk and all that kind of stuff. I figured the test results, I mean, even though they didn't show a whole lot, at least it would give her some idea of what tests had already been done and then where to go from there. And I guess whatever, I didn't realize this, but whatever had been charted at Piedmont, there were some inaccuracies in that I wasn't aware of. And a nurse called me back. I called to see whether this neurologist might be able to fill out the form for the nonprofit organization so that I could even get to these out-of-town consults. Because since the GP wasn't, I mean, she had filled out the forms for Vanderbilt, but she knew that the only way I was going to be able to get there was via this nonprofit organization. And, if I couldn't get there, then that was going to kill the referral. And I didn't really understand why she would do that, why she would make a referral setting it up to fail. And knowing that the only way for me to get there was for her to fill out the paperwork, and not being willing to do that. But this neurologist that I was planning on seeing in February locally, after she looked over the records from Piedmont, told the nurse that there really wasn't anything more she could do for me. And I said to the nurse, what do you mean? She hasn't even seen me yet. How can she make that assessment before she's even seen me in person or had any time to, observe my symptoms and how I'm doing and how things progress over time? And she said, oh, well, it was based on the records. And I said, well, what records exactly? And she read an excerpt to me. And she said, she read something from Piedmont that said, Vanderbilt has discredited her. And I was like, what? I said, I haven't even seen Vanderbilt yet. What are you talking about? I said, I'm still waiting to hear a response from them as to whether I'm accepted yet. They're reviewing the material and, what I do have. And I haven't even gotten a final decision yet. I haven't been seen by Vanderbilt. And they said, yeah, it says here Vanderbilt. And I said, who said this? And they said, well, several people signed off on it at Piedmont. And I said, what? I said, that's incorrect. I said, no, I have not even been seen by Vanderbilt yet. And she said, oh, well, the doctor just figured, well, since you've already had all this workup, that there's nothing more she can do for you. And she doesn't want to waste your time. And I said, that's completely incorrect. I said, it was Emory, not Vanderbilt, that, said these discrediting statements. I said, I haven't even been to Vanderbilt. They haven't seen me with it. They haven't done that. I mean, why on earth would somebody write that? I said, I never said such a thing. I said, why would I say that if my whole plan right now is to go to Vanderbilt to be assessed? That's ridiculous. And I said, not only that, I said, why would a doctor completely base her whole opinion on some medical records? When she hasn't seen the patient. And I'm like, well, she was like, well, you can, you can either keep the appointment or cancel whatever you want to do. But she's basically saying that there's nothing more she can do for you. And I said, well, if she's got that kind of a negative outlook, then there's no point. I said, there's no point in me going 50 miles, which is basically how far it was from my house, to see a doctor that's already given up on me before she's ever seen my face. Clearly, she's not the doctor for me. And I said, I need somebody who is willing to work with me, not against me. Somebody who is willing to look at me rather than just looking at what other people have written about me. And starting from this point forward, that's the only way that I'm going to get the care that I need, is for a doctor to just clear away all the bullshit and all the conjecture and all the subjective stuff that has been written in my chart, and look at me for me. Because otherwise, I'm dead. Seriously. I don't have a chance unless I can find a doctor who is willing to look at me for me and not be influenced by all the noise, all the background stuff that's going on, around me. I mean, all I can say is that I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up. I've always been completely honest. I mean, maybe I'm too honest. I don't know. Because when I see something, I say it, whether it's good or bad. Maybe I'm too honest. I don't know. And maybe the people that I'm encountering don't know how to handle that. I don't know. But what you see is what you get with me. I mean, I am completely upfront. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't play games. And I am just, what I'm saying here. I don't even know what else to say. But I'm just running into one barrier after another, and I'm tired. I'm so tired. I woke up this morning and I was in so much pain. I was in so much pain. My head felt like I had an ice pick stabbed through it, through the front of my head. And I was in so much pain. I just was praying that I could go to sleep and not wake up again. Because to be ill and not to be treated is the cruelest fate that you could relegate somebody to. I'm a human being. I'm a human being, and I deserve better. And you know the worst thing? The worst thing of it all is that I'm not the only one in this position. I've gone online and I've seen so many people who this has happened to, and it's not right. It's not right. When somebody is ill, they need care. They need medical care. Unbiased, compassionate medical care. And they need a doctor who believes them, who takes their symptoms seriously, and says to them, I don't know what's wrong, but I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna help you find out. I'm not gonna leave you to the wolves. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna investigate this until you and I together find out what's wrong and do everything in my power to fix it. And I'm not gonna let you suffer. That's all anybody deserves. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people have written in your fucking chart. It's not true. And for whatever reason, whatever agendas they've had, to say such vindictive things, that should not ever be the focus of doctors that come in the future. I have told people again and again that I want those records to die. I want those records in the past because they're not valid, they're not true, they're not who I am. And all I can do is try to speak out, tell the truth, and just try my best to get my point across. Because I know there are so many people right now going through this. People that are undiagnosed, people that, are just trying their best to fight through every day, day after day after day with chronic illness. going to their doctors and trying to explain themselves the best way they know how. And the best thing that doctors can do if they don't know what's wrong is just say, I don't know. But we're going to find out together. It never does a patient any good to throw them under the bus, to paint them as if they're crazy, or as if they're faking, or as if what they're saying cannot be believed. There's absolutely nothing of clinical value in doing that. All it does is hurt patients. It hurts people's lives. And it needs to stop. Look at me. Look at me. Do I look like I'm feeling better? I'm not. This is real pain. If there are any doctors out there who see this, any residents, any medical students, look at the effect of what this does to human lives. This is not okay. This is absolutely fucking devastating. To do this to a patient is absolutely unconscionable. And it's not okay. Don't you ever do this to somebody. If you're in the early stages of your career, learn from this. Don't let your patients end up like me. It's hard enough to be ill, but then to be maligned on top of it is just unbearable. And it makes the physical illness worse. I never asked for this. All I did was go to the doctor and go to the emergency room for help because that's what I was directed to do. That's what I was advised to do. And I went in there and I told the truth. And for whatever reason, I was basically attacked. But it had nothing to do with me. I could have been anybody. I just happened to be the one targeted that day. And I have something I need to say about these healthcare corporations as a whole. I don't know, but something is fundamentally flawed about those types of systems. I don't think you can really deliver health care on a mass basis like that. That's not the way that it was supposed to be. Nowadays, it's no longer about pleasing the customer or the patient. It seems that things are designed to benefit only the corporation, and rules and regulations are made accordingly. And if patients can't fit in to that framework, then they're just left behind. And in the end, that's not the way to help people. And if you're not in the business of healthcare to do what the patient needs, to meet the patient where they're at, then you're doing them a disservice. I really would like to do something to make this stop, not just to me, but to all the patients that are going through this that shouldn't have to. I would like to be involved in training medical students and training residents as they're just beginning their careers, because that's where it starts. That's the crossroads that they encounter when they start to to become new doctors. And I don't know, something has happened in this society where things are no longer customer driven, and you're expected to just take whatever they dish out, be it good or bad, and there's no accountability anymore. I tried and tried and tried to work with these people, and I offered so many possible solutions, and they just weren't willing to meet me halfway. A year later, I'm still not getting the treatment that I need. I'm not getting the higher level assessment that I need. And as I said, I'm still waiting to hear back from Vanderbilt. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I don't know if I'll be accepted or not. But if that, if that statement that was read to me by the local neurologist office was sent to Vanderbilt along with that referral that was done by the doctor at Piedmont, then I probably won't get in. Because I never said that. And they took that, I guess what had happened at Emory, and put the name Vanderbilt on it. I've never been seen by Vanderbilt. I'm trying to still get in there, but I've never even, never even seen them before. So I'm still waiting for the higher level assessment. And I'm just really worried that things are going to get to the point where it's going to be an emergency again, and I'm going to end up passing out or ending up in the ER or something like that. And without the proper medical backup, I feel like I will be a sitting duck when that happens, because I don't know. I don't know what will happen to me in the future. And, this brings up another issue about Aspies that are aging. What will happen to us? That the infrastructure is just not there, to meet our needs. People don't know how to deal with us. They don't know how to work with us properly. And, we end up going it alone in a lot of instances. And I find also that in terms of working with somebody, or even getting, the paperwork, the official assessment and everything, as an adult, that's next to impossible, because if you're on Medicare and Medicaid, most of these people who do that only see children, and they're also not used to dealing with adult women, especially adult women of my age. And, so you don't have backup on that end either. And, what do you do? I I feel like I'm creating a roadmap here, but, I still don't really have all the answers. And I hope someday that maybe I can help other people who are going through the same thing, how to overcome this stigma. And that's the thing, this kind of thing should never have happened, and it should never happen to anybody, because all it does is hurt. It doesn't do anything to help or benefit the patient. I have continued to follow through on the federal level with Office of Civil Rights, and it just seems like at every level there's this, refusal to regulate. And so if the systems that are supposed to be there to regulate these corporations are opting out, and they're just deciding, making an executive decision not to enforce the law, then what are patients left with? What recourse do we have? I mean, I never set out to take legal action or anything. That was like the last resort. All I wanted was just for them to make it right. And if I was going to be leaving there, at the very least, to make it possible so that the next professionals that I dealt with would take me seriously and work with me. But that didn't happen either. They fixed it so that I could not get help when I left there. And they pretty much cooked my goose. And like I said, that's wrong. That's morally wrong and ethically wrong. Because, all I can say is, I'm telling people exactly like it is. And I have absolutely no reason to lie or fabricate anything, or, I'm not, mentally ill or anything like that. I have Asperger's, but that in absolutely no way should negate my real physical medical problems. and the validity of them. But that's exactly what happened. I was misinterpreted because of my Asperger's, and these people just took that and twisted it all around and ran with it. And it has been passed on and passed on and passed on. And it needs to stop. You know, it seems to me like people who are autistic slash Asperger's, you know, it's like it's open season for neurotypicals to just jump on them, you know. And I'm not really a rude person, but when I am poked at and poked at and poked at over and over and over, I get really, really irritable. And I admit that. And I've talked to them about that. I said, I cannot take protracted suffering. I cannot handle it. It's not just a matter of me, just letting it all out and not controlling myself. I really, I think I have shown extreme restraint considering what I've been subjected to. And it wasn't until I was absolutely systemically attacked by a corporation, a major healthcare corporation, and my back was absolutely against the wall that I got royally irritated. And, then that was used against me. But, there's something wrong, and it's not just the patient. There's something wrong with the way these systems are made. Everything seems to be to benefit these corporations. And, when things like this go wrong, terribly wrong, and things go off the rails, the regulatory agencies on a state level and a federal level that are supposed to rein them in are not doing it. And this is why I have contacted Secretary of Health and Human Services, Sylvia Burwell, on a number of occasions, and I have kept her abreast of what's been going on. And I've told her that, look at my paper trail. It's clear that the system as it currently exists is not working. It's broken. And there are really no real protections for the patient when something like this happens. And even in terms of the medical board, the medical board recently sent me a letter saying that as far as correcting the records, that all a facility basically has to say is that what's written is true and correct. They put it in those terms. And that's their loophole. Whether it's true or not, they can get away with it if they make that statement as a defense to amending or correcting the records, the request from the patient that they correct the records, the inaccuracies. And so I wrote Secretary Burwell again, and I provided her a copy of that letter. And I said, I think I had provided her a copy also of the letter that I got from Office of Civil Rights, which had a lot of vague stuff in it about privacy. But, the only privacy that has been violated is mine. Because these large systems, I was explaining to somebody the other day, a friend of mine who I met through one of the groups on Facebook. I was explaining to her the other day that these big healthcare systems are set up in such a way so that when you say something to one person, it's spread far and wide. And, they put the message in, and, you know, possibly hundreds of people see it. So there's really no doctor patient privilege anymore. And that just shouldn't be. When you go to a doctor and you talk to them about something in confidence, what is said in that room really should stay in that room, and it has no business in a patient's medical record. And especially when they start quoting the patient, in the medical record, if they get any of that wrong, then it can really sink your boat. And, so really it seems to me that that practice should stop. They should not be trying to quote patients in the medical record. They really need to stick to the facts, and that's it. The test results, what the plan is, what they're in the process of doing for the patient, what medications you're on. Those are the kinds of things that should be in a medical record, not people's personal opinions, whether they like you or don't like you, or what they think about the validity of your illness or whatever. That stuff really has no clinical benefit, and it has no business in a medical record, especially not an electronic medical record that follows you everywhere you go. Because you've got to really consider before you pick up that pen as a medical professional, whether you're a nurse, a doctor, a tech, or whatever. When you're charting about a patient, you have a responsibility to do it responsibly, and think about what you're writing and what effect it's going to have before you write it. You can't just write it as if it's your journal, because that's a human life that you're dealing with, that you're going to be influencing other doctors that see that patient. So you really need to think long and hard before you pick up that pen and write something in a patient's chart, because it can hurt them for the rest of their life. And it can end their life, because if they don't get the care and the treatment and the testing that they need to adequately identify what's wrong with them and then treat it in a timely manner, that person can end up dead. They can just get sicker and sicker and sicker, and then you will only find out what's wrong with them upon autopsy. And honestly, you've got to ask yourself, is that fair? Is that doing the patient justice? I don't think so. I don't think so. There's something fundamentally wrong with the way things are done. And I really think that the laws need to be changed, because as they stand, there's no enforcement, and there are too many loopholes. And these corporations seem to operate as though they speak for all of the doctors that work for them. And there becomes this group speak that goes on. They all get together and get their story together. And if they start working against a patient rather than for a patient, then, it gets way out of control.
And then what do you do to rein it back in? The procedures are just not in place to do that. Um, I think that number one, um, an additional amendment needs to be added to the current hate crimes legislation because, in reality, institutional bullying within a healthcare corporation is, in effect, a hate crime because what they're doing is they're deciding that they think that you're mentally ill or whatever, and in their mind, I mean, even if they don't, that's not the truth, it's not a fact, in their mind they're treating you the way they think you are. And so um, the way that these civil rights laws read, all of them, and especially the ones that involve disabilities, like the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Protection and Advocacy Act of 1986, those types of laws, um, you don't even have to have the disability that they think you have in order to be covered under those laws. If they think that you're mentally ill, even if it's something else, like in my case, my Asperger's, they interpret you as being mentally ill and they just think, oh, nothing's wrong with her, she's just crazy. And they treat you accordingly, which means that they offer you no treatment and they stop your entire assessment. That is a form of discrimination under the law. But the problem is that at the enforcement level, nobody's doing anything about it. They're just letting it slide. And that's a problem. It needs to stop. And there needs to be new processes put in place legislatively from the federal level. Because if it's left up to states, it'll be picked apart and watered down. I mean, I know how that works. I've been a lobbyist in the past, and I've done that on a state level, so I know how that works. The only way to do this is to attack it federally and to put it into federal non-discrimination laws and hate crimes legislation. The only way to fix this, well, there's two ways. One is in case law, which means patients like me, if they were to file a lawsuit in order to get these records corrected or completely expunged because they're so riddled with inaccuracy and defamatory statements. Um, if one person were to break the ice and win a judgment like that, it would help so many patients because then if this happened to them, they would have some leg to stand on, some precedent in the law books to prevent this from just going out of control and for their having no recourse. Then they would be able to go to an attorney and say, look, there was this other case where this happened and a judge ruled in the patient's favor to have these records corrected so that they could go on with their health care in peace. And but right now it's this sort of no man's land where people are, attorneys don't know even what category to put it into. They don't know if it falls under the category of civil rights, whether it falls under defamation, whether it falls into the category of malpractice or personal injury or medical negligence. I mean, it's all of those things rolled into one, but because it's so complex, attorneys really are afraid to venture into those waters. And so patients are left at a loss. And I have been told by many people that I need to get an attorney. I mean, this is not what I wanted to do. I'm not a litigious person by any means. And I know that it's a lot of work. And, being physically ill, I really, I really don't relish doing that because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of stress on my end. That was like the last resort. I really had hoped that these people would be reasonable and work with me and fix this problem and help me get back on track with my health care, get to where I need to go, and get this addressed and start some treatment with me so that I could possibly move forward and have some quality of life. But that didn't happen. And at every turn, you know, they just got away with it. And, it wasn't enough for them to hurt me in house, while I was at Emory. Um, they had to try to completely discredit me so that when I left there, that I wouldn't get any help outside of there. And so, that completely left me at a loss. And I have been dealing with this day in and day out. Um, you know, just trying to maintain and, hoping against hope that at some point, you know, things would get better. And at the very least, even if what is wrong with me has no cure, or it's something so rare that people just don't know how to tackle it, um, and all they can do is treat it symptomatically, at least maybe they could do that and continue, even so, continue to keep their eyes open for possible clinical trials that come along or things that may be available in medical science in the future that could help me. But the thing is that constructive solution hasn't been followed through on their end. I mean, I'm trying my best to make it happen, and to work through things so that I can get there. But a lot of it depends on doctors and, basically doctors having to vouch for you. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. I need a doctor who is going to be behind me 100%, not a foot in and a foot out, of the water. Somebody who is going to look at me and go, look, I see you. I see that what you are telling me is genuine. And, you know, we're going to lick this together. And I haven't had that. I still don't have that. And I don't know how I'm going to get it. I mean, I know there are people graduating every year, new doctors coming into the field. But, with the records continuing to be an issue every time I go to a new doctor, they want those records. And I'm being put in the defensive position of having to explain myself every time I go to a new doctor. And I